All right, welcome back to the channel. So in this video, we're going to talk about Manny Pacquiao and what Derrick James, who's Errol's coach, had to say about his performance, and that he pretty much said that he's not that skilled and that he's just been relying upon athleticism and aggression his whole career. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So, we're going to do another post-mortem on Manny Pacquiao and the fight with Yordenis Ugas, but this time from the perspective of Derrick James, who is the trainer of Errol Spence Jr. And he said some things that I thought were pretty true, but it was interesting hearing from him when he was asked to break it down. And he said that, he had before the fight began, he went to the locker room of Yordenis Ugas and talked to Yordenis Ugas and told Yordenis Ugas that, even though Errol Spence Jr., this was supposed to be Errol Spence Jr.'s chance to get this, to get stardom, to have that tremendous win over Manny Pacquiao, that, it's Yordenis Ugas' time and that Yordenis Ugas was perfectly set to do that. And then he was asked, like, what did he think about the performance and what did he think about Manny? And he said that pretty much that, that's how he saw the fight going, except for if he thought if it was going to be against Errol Spence Jr., he think Errol Spence Jr. probably would have, broke him down, maybe broke a rib or something because of the amount of pressure. But he said something about Manny Pacquiao that I thought that I've been thinking was true for a while. And I think that, if you put it in perspective, you'll notice is that Manny Pacquiao is not like, he's an exceptional athlete, but he's really not that technically skilled of a fighter. He really relies upon his aggression, his athleticism, his quickness, and his awkwardness in order to win boxing matches. And that once that athleticism was gone, that athleticism let him down when he was in against a very fundamentally sound fighter like Yordenis Ugas. Like Yordenis Ugas, and going into this fight, I said this several times about Yordenis Ugas. The Yordenis Ugas is somebody that is very, very knows how he comes up in a very classic style in the Cuban boxing system. In Cuba, they send kids to school for boxing and to school for sports, and so they have a very set way that they go about setting people in there with their technique and knowing how to fight. And one of the things that Yordenis Ugas got coming out of Cuba was knowing how to fight southpaws, because southpaws that's the predominant style that those fighters fight in. So Yordenis Ugas coming from a classic style where he is taught, how to fight, how to move his head, how to feint, right, how to jab, how to throw a straight right hand, how to hook behind the straight right hand, all of those good things, where Manny Pacquiao really didn't come through that. Manny Pacquiao learned how to fight on the streets of Manila, but he's somebody that was tremendously athletic and knew how to go about taking advantage of his athleticism to get the win. And you've seen this happen, through generations and generations of fighters, where you have a fighter that is super athletic, that once that athleticism's gone, that it becomes a problem for them. And that's what Derrick James said about Manny Pacquiao. That he's not a skilled southpaw. He's not somebody that is going to be has a bunch of different looks. Somebody that that is going to be able to react on everything that you do, is going to know how to anticipate what you're going to do. It's that he's more like somebody that, just because he's so awkward and because he's so fast, that he's able to, when he's younger, really overcome. Now, he's not the only person in boxing that has been in that situation. Other people that for example, Derrick James has said the same thing about Terrence Crawford when he compares Terrence Crawford to Errol Spence Jr. And he says that, look, Terrence Crawford he's a tremendous athlete. He's tremendously fast. He's strong, right? And, he has great reflexes. But other than that, he's not a technically sound boxer. Now, the thing that I find interesting in it is the kind of the bias and the coverage of things where you don't really talk. You can see that about Manny Pacquiao, but Manny Pacquiao is celebrated for it. But when you see that in somebody like, say, a Deontay Wilder, then Deontay, who's just known as a one punch wonder, right? He is made fun of, or or talked down on because of that fact. But that's what makes boxing, though. Now, I'm not saying that means Manny Pacquiao is any less great a fighter than Manny Pacquiao is, because Manny Pacquiao is a great fighter. He's had over 70, well, I think about 70 fights. I think he's lost 8 fights out of the 70 fights, but many of those fights were extremely electric fights. They were things that caused you a lot of excitement. He came up and beat a lot of people that, like, back to back to back, that people didn't think he was going to be able to beat, like being able to beat Margarito, being able to beat Shane Mosley, being able to beat Cotto. These are a lot of guys that people didn't think that he would be able to beat when he got in there. But again, his athleticism, his quickness, his hand speed, and all that was able to overcome. It just so happened that once you get to be over 42 years old, you're not able to do that anymore. But the same thing happened to other great fighters like, Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was somebody in the 1960s that was like, Ingemar Johansson said something about him when he sparred him. They was like, man, what does this guy ride a bike 10 miles a day? Because he had wheels that kept going and going and going and going. But over time, those wheels slowed down, and that's when, in the second half of his career, he wound up taking a lot of punishment from fighters. The same thing also happened to Roy Jones Jr. Roy Jones Jr. is somebody that it was like, he really couldn't be touched because of his reflex. He was incredibly quick, and can do what he wanted in the ring. In fact, he did it all the way from 100, and I think he might have even started at 154 pounds and moved up to 160, 168, 175. I think he skipped cruiserweight and went all the way up to heavyweight. So he was in a certain way like the original Manny Pacquiao in that regard. Not the original one, because other guys moved up weight classes, but the recent boxers that have moved up weight classes, Roy Jones Jr. is really that guy that did that. But once Roy Jones Jr. got to heavyweight, when he came back down and he lost that muscle weight, and he lost his quickness and he lost his agility, then it was down to his boxing skills, and as a result, he winds up getting beat by Antonio Tarver, then knocked out by it might have been, he got a draw. I can't remember if it was a draw or he got a questionable win against Antonio Tarver. He ran it back, got knocked out by Antonio Tarver, then ran and fought Glennoff Johnson, got knocked out by Glennoff Johnson. So, I'm just hoping that Manny Pacquiao sees that, his athleticism is gone and all that, that it's pretty much a wrap for him in that regard, and that he goes about and retires and keeps himself safe, because at this point in time, that's pretty much what he's been relegated to, is a lower skilled. And I'm not saying that he's not talented. I'm separating in talent and skill fighter who's going to be a victim of other fighters. And I think that's the way it would go if he does not retire. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.